Okay, all right. Welcome to How to Be a Texan. Tonight we are going to talk about Mexican relations, and we have a special guest tonight. So this is Kyle. We've got Kevin. How you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. And we've got our new friend Carlos.
He's not a new friend. He's an old friend.
Oh, yeah.
an old new friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for the invite. This is cool. I like this.
Oh man. Hey,
Yeah.
We're proud to be Texan. Proud to have you on.
Yeah, so we got Carlos Palacio here today.
Thank you.
Longtime friend of the Holder family.
Yep.
And owner of Trio Craft Coffee.
Yeah. Little coffee shop, and I have a newborn at home, so we're keeping things simple. Just work and baby. And
Work and baby.
So this is fun. This is my fun right here.
When was the last time you actually slept?
This baby has been really good. Knock on wood.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, but she does get up every 3 hours. She's a little clock.
Yeah.
So at least I know she's getting up in 3 hours. So I take little naps. Like, I feel like I'm in boot camp or in the army. I just feel like, it's just raining outside and I'm on duty and, with my rifle on and take a little power nap and then go.
So back to it. I want to ask you guys a few things. So about Mexico. See, Kev, we've been around Texas our whole life, and so first of all, Carlos, why don't you give us a little history on you, and then I'll go into kind of some of the fun stuff I want to talk about Mexico.
Yeah. So I'll kind of start. Cut me off if I'm talking too much. But born in Mexico City, so in the 70s. It was really weird, even for Mexico. It's weird because everybody talks about diversity right now and all that. Like, man, I think Latin countries are the least diverse, period. Like, there's only Mexicans out there. Nobody wants to move there. I'm kidding. Yeah. No, there are some Europeans, but those guys are funky, so they don't count. So born in Mexico City. My dad's from Colombia, so he was a professional soccer player. He was selected for the Olympics and hurt his knee. He couldn't make it.
Oh, wow.
But he actually made the trip to Mexico, and I really think he moved illegally. But,
Illegally from Colombia to Mexico?
Because we don't have a wall. So I don't know how he worked it out, but anyway, so he fell in love with my mother. She's from Mexico, and so we were there. And then when we were little, they decided to move back to Colombia, which, by the way, Mexico City is kind of like the New York of Latin America.
Yeah.
It's just packed, urban, chaotic.
I'd love to go there. Have you ever been there, Kyle?
No.
I haven't either. I'd love to go there. My dad's been there several times.
Really?
Yeah.
So let me know. Like, we can make that happen.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Because my parents are there. We'll definitely, even probably provide a place and all that whenever you guys are ready.
Awesome.
And you need a tour because it's chaotic. But it's fun. It's a good place. So my dad is from a little fisher town in Colombia. So night and day. Like, we moved there. Everybody in the family hated it. And then we got into it because it was like a little Port Beach town in the Caribbean.
Let me make sure I'm tracking here because
Yeah.
I'm kind of slow. So your dad was selected. Your dad was from Colombia, selected for the Olympics.
Yes.
Ended up in Mexico. Met your mom there. You were born in Mexico.
Yes.
But then y'all went back to Colombia.
Yeah. So we were born in Mexico. I have two other siblings. We were. I'm the middle child, and I was I think 7 years, and then we stayed in Colombia, for a few years, and then moved back to Mexico City as an early teenager. Graduated from high school there, and then I made my way to my uncle was. I have some family here in the U.S. and he was teaching Spanish in the university, and just kind of got plugged in there and started school in Washington State. And
So was he teaching in Washington?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
At University of Washington?
No, it was a community college.
college?
Yeah, Wenatchee Valley College.
Cool.
There. And
But that's different on Pacific Northwest, isn't it?
yeah. Totally different too.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But it's funny though, because we were kind of in the countryside, and and you always think of, Texas kind of, the first picture that comes is cowboy countries. And there was an element of that there.
Oh, yeah.
There totally is.
Yeah.
And it is beautiful country.
Yeah, it
And
is.
yeah.
Yeah, so we were like around the apple orchards and all that, which, I mean, it's funny, but a lot of Mexicans too, because all the apple orchards and, all the farming, there is just, I mean, that's all kind of...
Lots of labor.
Labor force,
Yep.
yeah.
Labor force.
Yeah. So he was a Spanish teacher, and he also worked for the unemployment office, which was pretty interesting to get like an insight there on how things work. Yeah, but yeah.
And then how'd you get down here?
So we decided to move. I decided to start family. I have a bunch of family south of Fort Worth, and wanted to, number one, couldn't do the winters and wanted to start school. I just wanted to like kind of settle somewhere and start like going to school and build a career and all that.
So one kind of fascinating sociological experiment I like to do is to, ask someone kind of, so you've obviously lived in a lot of different places,
Yeah.
right? But if somebody comes up to you and just says, hey man, where are you from?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you answer that?
Yeah, so that's always a tricky question because I don't know if they're trying to get, obviously they hear an accent, which I don't think I have an accent, but I think
it's a cool accent.
Thank you.
Tell you that
It is
right
a cool
now.
accent.
Yeah, it's a funny thing because I think I speak how I hear, and I think I'm speaking the same words that I'm hearing, but obviously there's something there that I'm not, I internally don't hear myself with an accent.
Interesting, yeah.
So it's always tricky because I'm not sure if they're trying. Like I have to figure out really quickly: are they asking me where I was born, where I live, where I have been, or like what are they trying to find out about me with that question? But I always, because it was always complicated, because I always answered it like 15-minute answer. I was born here and my parents are from there, but I kind of defaulted at some point and saying, where do I feel home? Where is home? And Texas is home. So I always have my standard answer is like, born in Mexico City, my father's from Colombia, but I'm Texan.
You're
now.
a Texan.
Yeah. And this is home. This is home, yeah.
Very cool.
That is cool. Well, good. Well, I love the accent. I'll tell you what. I'll jump right into it. One of the benefits I think that we get as Texans from having Mexico as a neighbor, I really want to spend some time on that one. To me, that's really the crux of this discussion. Not only having our friend Carlos with us, but really talking about the benefits of being the next door neighbor to Mexico. We talked a couple of weeks ago about, how many Mexicans are there? Well, Siri says, or Alexa says, there's anywhere from 124 to 130 million of them. And we've got a ton of them. In our 27 million Texans, we got a ton of them here in the state with us. Matter of fact, and I don't have, I wished I had the facts on it, but we are getting to be a largely Hispanic 27 million. So when you look at the tipping point, typically you think of the Anglos being dominant in that, and it's really a Hispanic dominant culture now. So I tell my kids, and I've made them all take Spanish. I'm like, if you're going to live in California, if you're going to live in Florida, Arizona, or Texas, you need to speak Spanish.
Yeah.
And I just got in an argument with one of my 14-year-olds, because we were talking about how he used to play soccer, and I coached him for years and years and years, and I had 8 of my 11 starters on that soccer team were Spanish-speaking boys, so I spoke Spanish to that team all the time. And my son would be like, Dad, speak English. I'm like, dude, why? The whole,
Yeah,
so,
the majority of the team.
Yeah,
speaks
so I
that
think
language.
that's one of the benefits, is we have such a prevalence of Spanish speaking here that it makes us be less self-centered in my mind about being it's English only all the time. You go to Europe somewhere and those people are speaking 7, 8 languages all the time, every day.
Yeah.
Because there's such a melting pot there.
Yeah, and I guess not getting political or anything, and you could argue things different ways. It's like, why do I have to learn a lot different language? We're everybody should learn English. They're here, but I think.
I will say this: I think people that come here that don't speak English
Yeah.
do a much better job of learning English than us here who should be learning Spanish because it's all around us, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
So I think the problem is more on the English speaker side, not
Oh no, there's still
not embracing it.
that attitude of you're an American, you need to speak American. Well,
Which I mean, you gotta validate that. There's some truth to that. Like there's has to be an effort. I think there's also the welcoming, part of it. But man, just get above that and geographically and the benefits of even speaking another language.
That's right.
How much opportunity opens up. How much diversity opens up, and
That's right.
and diversity not in the sense of for the sake of diversity, but diversity that enriches your life.
Right. Back to this. Now, there's a lot of things about that are just funky, and Kevin and I agreed a long time ago that we wouldn't get too terribly political. and Mexico, as we know, has some unique things going on with it right now. And we can talk about, and we'll bring up the wall in a bit, but just in general. We
will build a great wall along the southern border.
There you go. That's
wow.
That's our president.
I didn't know you were going to go full Donald Trump on me. Come on.
That was not me. That was Kevin dropping. Thank you, computer. But yes, we clearly are in the midst of a political thing with the wall, and that in itself is interesting. But you look at a couple other issues that are enmeshed in that, and immigration is a big one. And why do you even have the need for a wall if there is a need for a wall? But then you have, just what's going on in Mexico. So, Carlos, you're kind enough to say, hey, come down to Mexico City with our parents. Well, the issue right now is, and so I'm in El Paso all the time right now. I'm working, again, in healthcare, and so I'm out in El Paso, and they yell at me, and they're like, Kyle, you can't go over to Juarez. I'm like, why not? It's beautiful. I want to go over there and have lunch or whatever. And they're like, dude, you can't do that. And it's because of what? It's because of the crime and some of the corruption that's known right now.
So what is the difference, do you think, Carlos? Why can't do they not have the right funding for police forces, or is it just complete control by the cartels? What is the difference?
Kyle, you listen to some podcasts about this. It's complicated.
It is.
It really goes back to this side of the world was colonized by Spaniards. Or at least and including Texas. Texas used to be part of Mexico. Sorry, guys.
No, trust me. We learned that in Texas history.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I'd love to hear from you at some point.
Yeah.
We always learn Texas history and kind of that whole story.
Yeah.
And I guess with the Texas spin on it, it'd be interesting to know what kind of you guys were taught in school about that. But that's a second topic, right? But finish this.
Definitely. So you have indigenous people being conquered by what we would consider civilized, culture. So Spaniards came, they did their thing, colonized, and at some point we wanted independence and revolution and independence, and that's a story of all the continent of America, right? Whether you're Britain or, any other part of the world, France.
Except for Canada.
Canada.
Kind of like just
which,
whatever.
Props. Props.
We'll report to anybody. Yeah.
That's funny. At a sudden break, you have people that were not ready to lead a country and weren't ready, and they didn't have the maturity to, right? So you were under a colony that has years and years of experience in governing, in structure, in authority, and then all of a sudden you have basically, the guy that started the whole independence and revolution, clergy, like mixed Indian guys with not a lot of education. So, so what you have now, the history book won't tell you that, but what you have is, people trying to lead a country, and in that, I guess and this is where I land, the humanity and the nature of man, of greed and all those things just start kind of bleeding into the structure, because all of a sudden you have, shoot, I gotta lead a country, I'm president. Hey, Kevin, you're my buddy, come here and, can you do this? And, Kyle, can you take care of,
Mucho dinero.
Yeah. And then you have your friends and, and then just it starts, so it's very from there, so it's a culture that it's just really hard to, like now you're looking at today without any context, and you're thinking you're an a-hole and you're a greedy, politician, but it's hard to unlink it from all that,
And so, what's different about what happened there versus what happened in the States, in your opinion?
Yeah, interesting. That would be a good.
I have a theory, but I'm curious what your thought is.
I've never really kind of questioned that. I think I think it's just providential and really blessed country, but it's probably because of the top, like the people that you had probably starting to lead that country. They weren't missionaries that still weren't educated or in tune with the laws and the basics of life, liberty, and dignity of man, and all those things.
Gotcha.
So they weren't they were Catholic Indian priests, and I don't say this in a derogatory way. It's just the way it was. So think of like how it would have happened if you had the Apaches or the Native Americans kind of start leading the country.
That's exactly where I was going to go with it.
So,
Not that is necessarily bad. I think there's pros and cons to both. Because I think,
again, not being derogatory.
Yeah, but I think what happened here was a lot of that culture has been just completely, wiped off the map, right?
Right.
In exchange for, this new, structure with stability and rule of law and,
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I think the U.S. is, one extreme. But then if you look at Mexico, the way the Spanish kind of interacted with the locals was very different than what happened up here, right? And in fact, we touched on this in one of our previous episodes on, the Texas frontier and kind of everything that was going on there. But at the end of the day, like if you sit here right now in this moment and you look at it, so yeah, U.S., stable government, stable police force, things are cool. Absolutely almost zero culture at all.
Yeah.
Whereas you look at Mexico, and Mexico is constantly being recognized on the world stage because of all the culture that's been maintained there. Look at all the ruins that are there. Look at the cuisine is classified as a world treasure now, right? So you've got all of that, but then in exchange for lack of stability, right? Maybe there was a way to accomplish both, and we kind of both missed the mark. I don't know. I really don't know if it's even possible.
I think that's kind of happening right now. Over the last couple of decades in Mexico, they've really done, they've democratized in Mexico, and we're seeing a bit more free trade and a bit more entrepreneurialism. And the thing that has freed our Mexican brothers and sisters, believe it or not, is the internet. It has enabled people. And I know it sounds crazy, but the history that I got, and I'm certainly no historian on or no expert on Mexican history, but what I read, and I listened to this podcast. It's called the Mexico Podcast, History and Present, by a guy named Brandon Springer. He lives in Mexico, and he did a nice job explaining exactly what you just said. You nailed it. It was really good and this guy did it in 2 20-minute podcasts. So I'd encourage you to listen to it.
That's awesome.
Because what he talked about was how Britain and Spain had their approaches to world domination. And what Britain wanted to do was do exactly what Spain did through their monarchy. And they did it through this thing which I call imperialism and extractionism. So the extractionism was the Spanish went in and they conquered these lands like Mexico or around Costa Rica or Venezuela or wherever, and they conquered that, and they had a subservient people that were in dense cities like the Incans or the Aztecs or the Mayans. They would conquer those people and convert them to slaves, which was bad. So the Brits did that. They came into North America. They got kind of what was left over, which was North America, the much less fertile land. Everybody wanted the stuff that the Spaniards already had. And there was no great population basis there. So what they had to do is they ended up having to bring in carpenters and blacksmiths from Britain over, from the UK over. And then just by force of not having people to work it, they created these entrepreneurial things and said, well, if you're going to eat, you have to work. And that was not the case down in Mexico and Venezuela, et cetera, where they said, oh, we've got this subservient population, they're working on our behalf, and we're extracting the value, namely gold, and we're sending it back to the king. And that's what they did. And so there was always, the way it's set up, and it flourished for a period of time, and then it faltered, where this extractionism was, I have a series of families that are going to rule. They're going to rule over kind of this slave labor, unfortunately, and we're not going to allow kind of that entrepreneurialism and that individual flourishing to occur, as opposed to the British colonies that had to. They could trade amongst each other, and they had to, and we weren't kind of taxing everything until then. You saw the American Revolution, and that taxation without representation was really the base of it, that kind of was the linchpin of it all. But what we had was we wanted to have Mexico and Colombia be able to trade with each other, and the monarchy back in Spain did not allow it. They said they had their thumbprint all over it, and they said, no, you can't do it. And that is the kind of the underlying premise of why we still have today kind of this elitism and extractionism mentality of the family's rule. And now what I'm saying is that I think we're seeing the opening, the doors cracking wide open for Mexico in general to have more of a free trade environment, to have more of these small businesses flourish, and some of this family corruption and control. I think it's going to be there for decades still to go, but I think we're seeing it start to erode.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry to preach about that.
No,
but
you're good.
It was really fascinating.
No, it makes sense,
and
there really is no concept of quote unquote the founding fathers of Mexico, right? Whereas the United States,
it was handed
founding
over,
fathers of the colonies, and they created the Declaration of Independence, and those things. There was no concept of that.
Yeah.
The extractionism thing is spot on, right? Because it was not only gold. It was also things like chocolate.
Oh yeah, just
and
resources.
Vanilla.
Yeah,
things that we had never even seen before.
Right.
If you think about everything that the world gained through that, and I've drilled into this. We had no concept of think about life without chocolate, vanilla.
It'd be tough for me.
Corn, potatoes.
Yeah.
I like all that stuff.
Chili peppers. We didn't have any of that stuff.
Yeah.
All that stuff came from that exercise that you're describing, where the Spaniards came in
and there was another so we're into coffee a lot, but there was another exchange the other way. Like we got coffee, as an example, and other things. So, but again, very interesting, and I think you have to mention that just to set it up to understand, kind of a lot of the issues that are happening right now, between U.S. and Mexico, and how Texas and all that. I mean, I think Texas has a rich culture when you're looking at just the United States. You got all that food stuff. It's amazing.
Oh yeah.
Well, and I think that's one thing that's really, really cool about Texas is you kind of get both of the. Because we clearly were part of Mexico, and there's the whole history of that.
Yeah.
And so you get really some really cool combinations of cultures.
For sure.
You've got the Mexican cultures, and then you've got the cattle thing, and so then you've got the American cowboys, but then you got the vaqueros from Mexico, and kind of how those interact, and then you start adding. You start adding, kind of taking Mexican cuisine, and let's throw that on top of beef, and suddenly we get Tex-Mex,
Beans,
right?
Yeah, chili.
So.
Yeah, I love that. And I was going to say also like music. So you don't know these because you don't understand, like Spanish and in regards to like just music. But a lot of like what I call like country Mexican music that sounds really cheesy and like everybody hates but recognizes. It's built structurally very similar to country.
Oh, yeah.
Like they're stories, like they're... they're talking about, their girlfriends, their beer, mama. Their dogs, their mama. Like, it's just that. Like, it's a very, I would compare it maybe not sonically, but I would compare it structurally and content-wise to country music.
Yeah. Now, are you talking traditional Mexican kind of folk music, or are you talking Tejano music?
Yeah, I'm talking like Tejano music. Yeah, like that's so you see that in a lot of the northern Mexico. I think the northern Mexico, part of Mexico, it's very Texas-like. Like it almost feels like it should be Texas, in some ways. Like you have the same kind of desert-like, country, and now I think the U.S. has done a better job to like nurture and flourish and all that, But you have a lot of like very country-ish, and you had a lot of European influence in that area as well. So you had a lot of German and German, Spanish, so a lot of blonde, blue-eyed Mexican in there.
Yep. It's same for Texas. When you start getting down into Central Texas, you see the German influence, the Czech influence, the Danish influence. And even some of the Tejano style music kind of has a polka kind of feel to it, right?
It has an accordion.
Yeah, and you start to realize if you step back and listen to it, you're like, whoa, wait a second. This literally, this is polka, but with Spanish.
Yeah, by the way, accordion is not a Mexican instrument.
No, it's not.
It's a German.
It is, yeah, exactly.
And then the trumpets too, so
one of the biggest contributions, I think, beyond kind of the food to Texas culture today, which people come, when they come to Texas, Kevin, I know they tell us, hey, take us to kind of the best Tex-Mex place. And then we're actually seeking out the best authentic Mexican. Yeah. Because we truly want that. And it's kind of not as nacho cheesed up,
Exactly. Well, and I told Carlos this recently because I kind of did a deep dive into learning how to cook traditional Mexican food.
Right.
And one of the reasons that I really got into that, and I don't know if it was like this when you were growing up, but where I was at growing up, we would go to Mexican restaurants, and literally there was almost 2 doors. One for the gringos, and then one where my parents would say, don't eat in there because you can't handle the heat.
Oh.
You can't eat that stuff. It's so hot, it's going to burn the hair off your face. Only Mexicans go on that side of the restaurant.
Huh.
And so I never had, legitimate, authentic Mexican food growing up. It's always Tex-Mex.
Wow.
Until I've been, now I start figuring out things as an adult. I'm like, there is a whole deep cuisine that you can really get into. And I've learned a lot just in talking to Carlos, and he shared family recipes with me, which are phenomenal.
Yeah.
Last time we had you over, I cooked a pig.
Yeah, the pastor was amazing. I mean, honestly, best pastor I've had here. I just think, even Mexicans miss the mark on that. They just don't know what to do. Your pastor is legit.
Yeah, so you're right, Kyle. Once you kind of get past the layer of cheese and start actually delving into traditional flavors, it's an amazing cuisine.
Yeah, because when I think of kind of authentic Mexican, I don't think of like the ghost peppers and just all peppered up. I think about kind of the pure meats, the way they cook it, and the barbacoa and all that. I mean,
that is good stuff.
It's just it's a pure, because we junk it up and we put cheese on everything, and then we're like, oh, well, that's Tex-Mex.
Or salsa.
Yeah, Tex-Mex. Yeah, that's right. So, but the other thing.
Salsa is now the #1 condiment in America.
Do you know why? Because people like to say salsa. Excuse me, do you have any salsa? We need more salsa. Where's the salsa? No salsa.
There you go.
That's hilarious.
Salsa. I love saying salsa.
Salsa. Yeah, and it's crazy because I don't think we get that geeky in Mexico about these, but like salsas. I mean, you go to the store and now that there's been a push for kind of local and crafty, like you can go to places and like, you know, some guy has his salsa recipe and like they're bottling up. In fact, at the shop we started selling breakfast tacos, and one of the salsas we get it from a customer's mom. She's a teacher. She's about to retire. Has a wonderful red salsa, and she's starting to bottle it up. And I was like, "Give me some; it's really good." Anyway,
I got a feeling that it's, and you know, I've got to tie in a South Louisiana reference here, but you know, when I was living out there running a hospital out in South Louisiana, they would bring me all kinds of food, and jambalaya was one of the things that they would bring, and I'd be like, "Hey, how do you cook that?" I'd be like, "Dude, we can't tell you that. That's a family recipe."
That's funny.
I got a feeling with some of the salsas, those are family recipes.
Oh, yeah.
You're not going to get those.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that, you know, unlike everything, sometimes you get a bad experience because people are not careful or caring. You know, so I feel like sometimes I go out and the salsas are not done with love and care.
That's
you
right.
know?
Yeah.
But you find a really good, authentic Mexican place, and then you can
so
tell.
good.
You can tell, yeah.
But to your point about simplicity, some of the best salsas are just keep it simple.
Oh yeah.
Simple,
keep
yeah.
it simple.
Yeah.
You know?
The KISS principle.
Exactly.
Hey, the other thing that I saw as far as, I mean, there's a ton of influence that Mexico has over Texas. One of the things that just smacks you in the face are just the names that we have here of cities and counties and all that. So when you think of San Antonio, El Paso, Bexar County, Mejia, you know, I mean, there's so many, you can't, I mean, we just say it. And then people that come in here, they're like, where do you live? Mexia? No, it's Mejia. You know? So, you know.
Yeah, that's funny.
Oh, yeah. No.
yeah.
It's all over
All over
California as
California,
well.
Arizona.
California, New Mexico, Arizona. Yeah. One other contribution that Mexico has to Texas, we have Zorro, a Latin superhero.
Nice.
Is he from Mexico?
Well, that's what it. Yeah, he was an elitist, and he put the mask on and stood for the common man.
Dude,
But in Mexico?
Zorro.
yeah.
Are you sure he was in Mexico?
I think so. I looked it up, and that was a contribution.
There was a movie about the Zorro. And I think they need to make it
That's so ridiculous.
Zorro.
Of all the stuff.
No. I looked it up. It's like, what did Mexico contribute to Texas? It said Zorro.
Zorro. Give
I
me a
love
break.
Zorro. Riding on a train on a black horse, man. How can you beat that?
Mexican wrestling too.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. What was that Jack Black movie?
Nacho Libre.
Oh, that's the best. That is a movie I've seen a couple times.
So there's a first for everything.
That's funny.
Get that corn out of my face.
Yeah.
There's a first. But
I do want to know about how you guys were taught history growing up in Mexico.
Yeah.
Specifically about the Mexico-Texas connection, because we were taught, you know, kind of Texas history is taught here in a big way.
Yeah.
That's right.
And in fact, a lot of states don't even have a quote history class. Texas has multiple semesters of Texas history.
And Carlos, before you answer, we're taught that Mexico is evil and Santa Ana is the devil. You know, and, you know.
I don't think.
No, I'm telling you, I was taught that Santa Ana and his 7,000.
Yeah.
You know,
I
they
just
were
like
terrible.
it when you say Santa Ana.
Santa Ana.
That's how my grandpa said Santa Claus. Santa Claus. Santa Ana.
No, Santa Ana, and we came up with that Battle of Gonzales, and you know, the come and take it cannon flag, and then we've got that. I mean, one of the greatest gifts from Mexico to Texas is the Alamo itself. Even though we lost some great men there, but still, it is a rally call, and I think that's one of the things that gives Texans that kind of that sense of pride is, hey, we started small but strong, and we're going to stay that way. So anyway, that's a perception.
Yeah.
A bad one, but it's a perception.
Did you guys learn Texas history?
So by learning Mexico history and Santa Ana.
Carlos Santana. He came a few years later.
So we are as bitter, you know, like if you had to name an evil president from Mexico, it'd be Santana.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, so you guys are as bitter about Santana?
Yeah, he was a terrible guy.
I mean, not Santana.
Santa
Santa Ana. See, now you got me saying Santana.
So
One of the greatest guitar players to ever live.
Yeah, he's good.
So you guys were bitter about Santa Ana.
Yeah. Have you had like?
Because he was an evil dude. I've read that.
He was terrible.
He was terrible to
he
the
was
Mexican
terrible.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was just power hungry, and yeah. So Santana, bad president. It's definitely
Santa
taught-
Ana.
Yeah, Santa Ana. So he's taught really in the history books. Not a good president. A lot of bad for the country. I think Mexicans have an affection to Texas,
which all adds up, right? I mean, because we were part of Mexico, and we just didn't randomly wake up one day and say, we'll secede.
Yeah.
Clearly he was a bad dude.
Yeah.
Right.
And we were the part of Mexico that said, we're out of here.
Yeah.
Right? We're not putting up with that. We want
Yeah.
to be part of the U.S. anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Or actually, we want to be our own country is what we wanted at that time.
I will say San Antonio's not Alamo's not taught a lot, maybe mentioned, but not taught a lot, but a lot of the blame is from, from him selling for pennies all this land.
Yeah.
Like, and in putting into context, he was like, it's a desert. There's nothing there. Like,
Right.
he was trying to make deals and, benefit himself, and he sold, California, New Mexico, Texas,
That's a bad real estate move.
for pennies. Yeah, for pennies. Interestingly enough, a lot of the, Spaniards and a lot of Europeans that were kicked out kind of moved to, that border of Texas, and there was a lot of. That's why in New Mexico you see a lot of like that architecture style, which is the kind of Mexican style adobe type houses and all that. So a lot of that, they kind of move there. And to answer your question, I think from my standpoint, and this is again just a practical standpoint. So that's kind of the history I know and kind of the feeling you got when you were taught, about history of Mexico. Like you can boil it down to. You had a stupid president, and he sold the land for pennies. So there's a bit of that animosity towards him. Is not really towards the U.S. or anything. I think really Mexican people have an affection to Texas because it's similar, and even just as a modern age. You have a lot of Cowboys fans in Mexico. I remember watching the Super Bowl, where Eggman and all those guys. I mean, which is crazy because American football is not a sport in Latin America, like zero. You have little pockets here and there of people that try to start something and play it, but everybody watches the Super Bowl, and everybody knows about the Cowboys.
And there were several years in a row where Jerry Jones would have a game in Mexico City, like a preseason game.
Well, it's smart because you go into Mexico City and you see advertisements of you see I think I saw Romo on a Spanish billboard, all in Spanish, and it's crazy. I mean,
but that just goes to the greatness of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah,
because,
agree.
The Houston Texans are closer to Mexico. Nobody cares about them.
Another good reason. Well, their name. I mean,
they
Cowboys.
don't care. It's Dallas Cowboys. Yeah.
Please, Cowboys. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, and so I think there is an affection of Texas. I mean, I think so. For example, my dad, he's a bit of a history. He likes history and whatnot, and I mean, he knows about all the JFK thing, and he's really in tune with that, and always been fascinated by that. And
does he know the real story? I mean, do you guys get the real story down there?
Yeah.
Do they keep it from us up here?
So we've gone we've gone to the 6th floor many times, but he remembers actually riding his bicycle, and it just impacted all the world. Really, that.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy to kind of know his perspective. He's like,
he was in Colombia. He was in
Colombia. He was riding his bike, and he said that the tank kind of went dead. He was like, "What's going on?" Went into the house, and they were all listening in the radio, and about JFK thing, and he always has that to like relate it to Texas and Dallas. So he loves going to the 6th Floor Museum, which I'm so glad they have a Spanish kind of voiceover little tour.
It's good.
So he was able to partake on that, and he loved it. If you guys haven't been to the 6th floor, it's amazing.
I hate to admit it, but I've never done it.
Dude, it's so good. It's so good.
I've worked in downtown for 20-something years.
Man, it's such a good treasure there. Yeah. Go check it out. Yeah. Do it.
To wrap it up from my perspective, I think we're blessed to be neighbors of Mexico. I think we've got a rich history here in Texas that has Mexico to thank for much of it.
Yeah.
With not only the names of most of our cities and towns and counties, but also the great food that we have and just the language that we speak now. It's English, it's Hispanic, it's Spanish, I just think there's so many things. And then not to mention the billions and billions of dollars of commerce that we trade back and forth between Texas particular, not just the U.S., but Texas in particular with Mexico back and forth, imports and exports is extremely valuable.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
I would agree. Growing up here, you learn. Kyle and I have laughed about this on previous episodes, but we're taught Texas history, over and over again, and the stories of Mexico and the independence and the wars, and that's all just kind of. But very fascinating stuff, but then if you overlay the cultural aspect on top of it, I agree. It's just phenomenal. It really is phenomenal to have a neighbor with such a rich, cultural depth to it that we don't have in the States. I talked about it earlier.
That's right.
All the ruins that are down there, the stories of I've been reading recently about the Aztec people and the Mayan people and kind of how those it's just amazing stuff. And the way, a lot of those things kind of bleed into our culture here is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
So,
Very cool.
Okay. Hey, Carlos, thanks for being with us.
No, thanks for the invite. This is awesome.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Ciao.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for everybody. And you want to ask them to give us a review or anything this week?
I think that'd be a good idea.
I almost wrote a review myself.
It's so lame because on one of the previous episodes I said, write us a review. You don't write a review. You leave a review. You leave a review on iTunes.
Well, you kind of have to write it. It's not an audible thing, right?
But that term is like, you're going to write it and put it in snail mail and mail it into Apple. It's ridiculous. You leave a review.
Yeah.
So look us up. We're on Google Play now, by the way.
Nice, I saw that.
Yeah, so we're on iTunes, Google Play, Spreaker, and coming soon to a theater near you. So look us up, like us, write a review, leave a review, and we'd really appreciate it.
And thank you, Zorro.
Zorro.
Thanks a lot, Carlos.
I want to see more Zorro.
And go to Trio Craft Coffee.
Yeah.
And what's your Twitter handle?
So I have at Carlos the Texican.
I love that, the Texican.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's nothing fun going on there, but you can follow me and more importantly at Trio Craft Coffee.
Nice.
Yeah.
Best coffee in the
that's where
planet.
That's where we do our thing.
Yeah, and we'll give a shameless plug for your podcast too. You and Andrew do this podcast. I think it's amazing. I've learned a ton about this coffee and it's, on Extract is what it's called on their podcast. So,
Extract Podcast. Look it up.
Yeah.
Please do. All right, thank y'all. We'll talk to y'all soon.
Adios.